I'm Matthew Wilkinson from Safaritalk.net. In the third and concluding part of this Safaritalk interview, Dr. Ian Player, Paul Dutton and myself discuss issues ranging from the methods which horn is smuggled out of South Africa via diplomatic means, the poaching syndicates and way to stop them, and the foundation of wilderness trails, putting the public into closer contact with South Africa's wildlife, connecting us humans with nature and how important it is for us to respect the environment.
I think there's another personality that I'd like to mention. His name was Jim Feely, who was my mentor in the early days, and we called him the Brain. And he really did help with the rhino story as well, and with the research he did and so on. And he and Ian worked together very, very hard to establish this rhino capture story and things like that. But Jim has played a major part in that, in the creation of that ethic. Well, we've got evidence of horn being taken into various embassies in Pretoria and things like that. And as soon as a horn goes through the main gate, it's no longer in South Africa. And it may not be investigated, and it can go out in any form, container or diplomatic bag and things like that. And it's a big gap, and I think our Foreign Affairs could be more proactive in trying to staunch that sort of system through diplomatic means and so on. But that's where a lot of it's going out. The people who are killing the rhino are just the frontline soldiers who are paid a couple of $1,000 to do the killing brutally as they do. It's the guys who get the money thereafter, the different levels of corruption and things like that. So you've got to go to the jugular to try and stop this scourge of killing the rhino.
I think the government has been very proactive, because when one speaks to the government, it's you've got to talk about the provinces, because the Kruger National Park, for example, that is a national body, but the parks in KwaZulu-Natal are provincial, as they are in the Eastern Province. And all the different provinces have their conservation organisations. And there's no doubt that all of them have been as proactive as it's possible to be. But there are always people who are going to take advantage of a situation, particularly where money is involved. But overall, it's easy to pick on particular incidents, which, of course, that is our tendency as human beings to do. Because we live in a world of great negativity, which always reminds me of Colonel Sir Lawrence von der Post, who was in a Japanese POW camp. And as you can imagine, it was not very easy for the men in there. And he always used to say, contain the negative, because if you allow the negative to get away, then you destroy yourself in the end. And that has always been my philosophy in the conservation world too. Contain the negative. Let's look at all the positive aspects. So let's look at, very recently there was a story on Carte Blanche of a very brave game scout, who blew the whistle on people who'd been trying to bribe him, and they eventually discovered that it was a man who had something like 5 million rand hidden away in his house. He was a kingpin in this whole rhino poaching. So there was a very, very positive story which needed to be broadcasted as much as possible. Negativity is it's a world of negativity now. One looks at the news, they've got to look very hard to find anything positive, let alone amusing. And in fact, I always remember the whole of last year or the year before, I kept a note of all the news broadcasts, and there was only one happy incident in the whole bloody year, and that was a man had gone into London with his dog, and he locked his dog in the car, and he then went out to go into the city, and while he was there he had a heart attack, and eventually about 3 days later when he came round, one of his first things was, "Oh, my dog, where's my dog?" And so everybody in London then started to look for this unfortunate dog. And they eventually found it. And when the dog got out of the car, it just leapt into this man's arms. That was the most heartening thing in the whole of the year. Yeah. Paul and I went through some very hard times, as indeed so did Nick Steele. And Paul has mentioned Jim Feely too, and we owe Jim Feely. It was Jim Feely who brought the concept of wilderness to this country, and I remember him showing me the 11 fundamental principles of the wilderness concept, and that led to the wilderness trails and the establishment of wilderness areas. And that came at a time when it was desperately needed, because whereas Paul and I were having and were learning as a result of working in the parks, the ordinary people, the public, were not allowed to walk in the parks. They had to sit in motor cars and gawk at animals as they went by. Well, with the establishment of wilderness trails, and the Wilderness Leadership School alone has taken something like 60,000 people now, that was a bringing of a total new awareness of the value of the parks, of the spiritual experience that one could have as a result of being able to walk in amongst and sleep on the veld at night and hear the lion roar and the hyena scream. So that was a very, very positive move in wildlife conservation. Now it's been copied everywhere. And the same thing with Nick Steele, who really established the conservancies. So there are many positive things that have been happening, and it would appear to be God testing us all the time. Well, in my own opinion, and Paul will have his.
I'll try.
In my own opinion, I mean, what has been a life-changing experience for people is a wilderness trail. For many, I mean, I can remember taking people 30 years ago, and 30 years later, you get a letter from the person who you've completely forgotten, and they say, now I know how important that experience was. It changed my life. And so I have seen a lot of lives changed as a result, because, I mean, what happens when you go into these ancient parks? It's an archetypal world. You're going back 100,000 years, and something takes place inside of oneself. You go back into that time, because we don't allow people to look at their watches, and they have to sleep at night next to the fire, and they have to keep watch alone, and it's a time for introspection, and all in all, it's a religious experience.
And also a curative experience, as we found out, taking criminals from this part of KZN on a wilderness trail where they sleep out at night with guns, but not to kill other human beings, but to protect themselves and to rub shoulders with these icons like White Rhino. And after a week in that environment, those people have changed immeasurably forever. So the value of the wilderness, it's a measure that you can actually say that's actually happening. And so people who have sort of lost track in their lives and so on, and have gone to crime and so on, this is a fantastic way of getting them back onto track and things like. And this is where we need lots of wilderness areas, rather than people coming out of prisons far worse than they go in. So this is an experiment that we're trying, and it's what the first results are very heartening. The people who are the worst criminals here are now bloody good people. So that's a measurement that I measure the wilderness. There are all sorts of spiritual measurements, but this is a physical one, and that's the importance of the wilderness.
Okay, that's the wilderness experience. The more people that can have that experience, the more people will understand our own place in nature. We consider ourselves the dominant species, and we are dominant, but we are not in harmony with it. And that wilderness experience brings you into a harmonic world, if that's the right word.
As part of my consulting work, I have worked with hunter-gatherers right throughout East Africa and Southern Africa, and it's tragic to see those same people who had that connection with the natural environment have no say whatsoever in the use of that resource. And this is what we found right throughout all those communities and things like that. And I'm sure those people had an ethic that we actually learned from. So there was nothing new when we came to Africa and things like that. But when it gets into the hands of greed and unsustainable forms of land use and so on, so these people have been left out in the cold. And so the knowledge that they have, although they've lost, their right for hunting and things like that, but their knowledge should be tapped. There are a lot of people, and I personally have an old game guard who I worked together with 45 years ago, and he was with us on this occasion at a Game Rangers Association meeting and so on. Now he is a remarkable person. He's one of the last of these wonderful people who taught us and led us for so many years and things like that. That's the link that we should try and engender before we lose, these last voices of voices in the wilderness and things like that. And that's the way we can do it, to try and get the modern generation to experience the same experiences that these people did.
We've just got to understand that, I've forgotten which president it was, but when he was fighting an election, he said, it's the economy, stupid, it's the economy. Well, I think what we've got to understand now in this world of ours, it's the environment. That is the most important thing today. I mean, Paul and I, canoed on the Mzanduzi and the Mgeni rivers when it was at a time when you could drink the water. You can't do that now. You drink that water now, you could die if you're not careful. And that is, one sees that everywhere, all over the world. So we just got to become more and more aware of the environment and our impact upon it, and to treat it with respect. There's all ancient people, like, as Paul says, the hunter-gatherers, who are looked down upon, but by Jove, they respected. They respected the land. So, modern politics should be about the environment, because if we don't look after the environment, we're not going to win. But that's where this rhino crisis, I think, has made a lot of people think who would normally not have thought much about it. So, distressing though it might have been and horrible as it is to witness, there's always some good somewhere. Always some good somewhere, and I think there's a lot of good. There's a greater awareness of the environment, and once again, the rhino have contributed their lives to it, and what a wonderful animal it is. Thank you.